Okay, so 18 LBJ and the Great Society, Part 4. We were talking about Vietnam. I had left off, I was talking about DM in South Vietnam. Uh, wasn't necessarily popular with a lot of the people of South Vietnam. He was kind of he had a lot of his cronies in the government and was generally seen as kind of corrupt. But I mean, theoretically, it's they've got elections, or maybe not. Maybe he cancels them. But Eisenhower is backing him. Okay, because remember, containment, containment, containment. North Vietnam is a communist country. We don't want them taking over the South. Okay? Maybe DM's not George Washington, but maybe you can. Here's the problem: you get a country that hasn't had a tradition of self-government, and you can't just well, we need a wise, experienced political leader. Sometimes you have to play with the cards you've been dealt. But if we can keep South Vietnam from going communist, maybe we can start influencing them. Maybe they'll develop into something better. But we fear that if it becomes communist, then we know where that leads, right? Blood purges, re-education camps, political prisoners, that kind of thing. Okay? We've seen it in the Soviet Union. We've seen it in China. Okay? So Eisenhower has sent small numbers of advisors to Vietnam to help them with their military. According to my notes here, there were maybe about 500 advisors on hand, U.S. Army advisors. Maybe there might have been a few Navy, Marines, Air Force, possibly, helping the Vietnamese armed forces learn how to, to take care of things. Okay, that's kind of where I left you off. So let's move back into this slide. Now, we were on this slide earlier, but I kept it because I wanted the map. Okay. The red arrows indicate that's the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is what people called it. This is where supplies are being infiltrated into the south from North Vietnam. They'll go through neutral Laos and Cambodia down and come out into South Vietnam. Okay, we'll hear more about that later. All right. So there's DM again on the cover of Time magazine. Okay. Now that's kind of where we stopped. All right. So here's President Kennedy. All right. Look, he's got this map here. It says Communist Rebel Areas, 22nd March, 1961. Okay, so I don't know when this press conference is, but the map's from March 1961, so let's assume the press conference is from 1961. So it would be early in Kennedy's administration. Right? So he's concerned about, what's going on in South Vietnam, and he'll continue Eisenhower's practice of sending advisors. In fact, the number will increase. Eventually up to about, according to my notes here, about 16,000. That's like a whole division of advisors, but they're scattered out. There's like 2 men here and 2 men there, and they're training and they're equipping. Here's how you maintain a helicopter motor. Okay, that kind of stuff. Technical advisors, military advisors. Okay? So Kennedy's all on board for, protecting South Vietnam. Okay? Remember, containment. Now, DM told you he's not real popular. There will be a coup against DM in November of 1963, the same month that John F. Kennedy is killed. I think DM was killed just maybe right before Kennedy. Kennedy's killed on the 22nd, if I recall. So roughly about the same time. Military leaders in South Vietnam know that the U.S. is not really pleased with DM. They think we would support removing him from power, and honestly, we probably wouldn't mind him going, but maybe for some legitimate process. Instead, there's a coup, and DM is removed from power. But then somebody comes up with your bright idea of killing him. Okay, I guess to keep him from getting back into power. So DM and John F. Kennedy both check out roughly about the same time. Now, sadly, what happens to the South Vietnamese government is they go into this revolving door of governments. Okay, so they put somebody in, but that got in through a coup, so that's not really legit. So we got to get somebody else. And I don't recall. I mean, I've read books on this. How many different leaders went through South Vietnam in a period of just a few years, but it's just like a revolving door. It's very unstable, and this is not healthy when you're trying to build a good, stable democratic government, to constantly have the government being reorganized and shifted and new people in charge. So that's just probably just makes things worse. Okay, so this is kind of what's going on when Johnson becomes president upon the assassination of Kennedy. Now Vietnam is really, really, really complicated. Okay, and it probably won't get all sorted out until all the people who lived through it are dead. Okay, because there's so much emotion attached to it. Okay, that it makes it hard to really step back and evaluate what's going on here. Okay, I wish I could spend some time on this, but it's really not too appropriate. I've actually taken two classes in Vietnam. One is an undergrad and one is a graduate student. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about this graduate class for just a second, just to kind of give you an idea about how controversial this war is. I'm taking this graduate course on Vietnam, and in graduate school we read a lot of books. Okay, so the first 3 books we read, the class was called Recent Scholarship on Vietnam. So the first book we read, now these books were all written by actual noted historians with footnotes and documentation and analysts. The first book we read basically argued that Diem was gaining control. Was slowly overcoming the communist insurgency, that was making headways, that was stabilizing the situation and suppressing the insurrection when we let him get killed or encouraged him to be killed or were just surprised when he got killed, and that after Diem fell, that the war went south. Okay, went south as it started going poorly for the South Vietnamese. Okay, so the first book argued that Diem was on the path to some kind of stabilization and control when he was killed and it all went haywire. Okay. The second book we read said that the U.S. was winning not doing well in the war under the command of General William Westmoreland, who we'll get to him in a minute. This is later. This is like in the Johnson era. Though Westmoreland was not doing a good job with this kind of war. It doesn't mean he wasn't a good general, maybe, but he wasn't equipped to handle this kind of counterinsurgency device. Okay. And so this book argued that Westmoreland had mucked it up. Then when he left command and a guy named Abrams came in, okay, as in control, that Abrams was winning control of the situation in Vietnam when the administration, basically the United States administration, decided to pull out and give up. So the first book said that Diem was winning when he got killed. The second book said that Abrams was winning when the Americans got fed up with the whole thing. The third book we read said that the whole war was unwinnable ever in the first place. We had no business being that there was no way we could ever win this thing. Welcome to Vietnam. Okay, so I got 3 books written by 3 historians, all of which have academic credentials, just not some guy in his basement, with a tinfoil hat, making these arguments about what's going on in Vietnam. And so this is the problem when you try to analyze it today. There's still so much political baggage attached to it, okay, that it makes it very hard to sort through. Okay, it might be another generation before people can really wrap their heads around it, which makes it hard for a bunch of high school kids taking a freshman level college class to really wrap their heads around it, probably. But you can read about it in the book. Try to gain some kind of insights into this thing. All right, so anyway, Johnson gets control in 1963 and then going into 1964. Okay, now Johnson will continue Kennedy's policies of keeping advisors in Vietnam. Okay, remember, Johnson's from Texas. Texans don't back down from a fight, right? Okay. He's gonna, he's not gonna let a little third-rate country like North Vietnam, sink American foreign policy. Okay, I think I can have a picture here. Protest Some people protested Diem's rule by setting themselves on fire in public spaces. Certainly a way to get attention from the news media. That's Secretary of Defense William McNamara. Don't worry about him. I never put him on the test. In fact, I didn't even really talk about him. Not a big fan of his, to be honest. It's just not that important to what we're trying to talk about right at the moment. There's Johnson. You already know who he is. There's William Westmoreland, the American commander. And I was trying to find the map. I guess the map's back at the beginning and I've gone past it. I can't go back. Escalation of war under Johnson. Well, you can, once this thing's recorded, you can back the video back up, look at the map. What will happen in 1964, some United States destroyers operating off the coast of North Vietnam. We're kind of keeping an eye on them, right? Because we know we're backing the insurgents in the south. One of them comes under fire from a North Vietnamese patrol boat. Okay. Now this is controversial. Some people say the whole thing was falsified just to give Johnson an excuse. I don't personally believe that. The best argument seems to be that there really was an incident one night. A North Vietnamese boat apparently maybe did take a shot at an American destroyer that they felt might be encroaching on their waters. Okay, that incident probably did happen. There was an incident a night or two later where a second destroyer came under attack. We think maybe that was a case of jitters on the part of our Navy guys, that they'd already heard there'd been an attack and that maybe they saw a radar blip and thought it was an attack. And so anyway, whether there was an attack or not is irrelevant. We believe there's been, okay, and so Congress will pass something called the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. And this is the closest thing we get to a declaration of war in Vietnam. The Tonkin Gulf Resolution authorizes the use of American military force to retaliate against the North Vietnamese for actions taken against American troops, basically, kind of summing it up. Sure, there's a lot more to it than that. And so under that, this gives Johnson the authority to launch retaliatory strikes against the North, so airstrikes, some of them coming off of aircraft carriers because they can launch fighters and bombers near the coast. And so they attack, or we think they attacked, or we manufactured an attack, and then we attack back, and then it starts to escalate. Okay? I'm coming up on the danger zone where sometimes these things start timing out on me. So I'll stop here. We'll start another video and see if we can't get through this whole Vietnam mess.